Hey everyone, welcome to the New Insight podcast, where we interview the most important movers and shakers in ophthalmology and give you new insights on the innovations ahead. I'm your host, Veeral Sheth. My guest today is Elad Kedar. Elad is CEO of Orasis. If you've been listening to the industry news recently, you know Orasis is making waves in our space with the upcoming launch of Qlosi, a recently FDA-approved pharmacologic for presbyopia. In our conversation, we touch on a number of topics. We talk about Elad's over 2 decades of executive experience in the industry. We talk about some of the challenges he's faced in that time and some of the challenges that exist taking a company like Orasis from its conception to the commercialization of its first product. We talk about the importance of strategic planning and adaptability, and eventually talk about the data that helped them achieve FDA approval for what may be a game changer for presbyopia. I'm thrilled to be able to give our listeners some new insights from a leader in the field that I have no doubt we'll be hearing more from in the near future. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Elad Kedar. Hey Elad, so thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you here. Let's jump right in. So Elad, tell us and our audience a little bit about Orasis and what you guys are working on, and maybe even a little bit about the history of the organization and how it came to be.
Sure. So firstly, thanks for having me here today. Great to speaking with you and with your audience. The Orasis story started almost 10 years ago. We know that in the pharmaceutical market, timelines are always a bit long. So we have developed a pharmaceutical drop for the treatment of presbyopia. We all know that for presbyopia, the gradual loss of focus on near objects, there is one solution that works for all, which is reading glasses. And reading glasses definitely do the work, but they come with a lot of limitations. On the convenience side, on the aesthetic side, it's really one of the very first signs of aging. And many people, particularly the ones that just start on that presbyopia journey, are really frustrated by not having additional solutions for presbyopia. And that's exactly where we came in at Orasis. So our product is a pharmaceutical eye drop that basically helps you to correct your near vision and gives you a break from your readers when you basically based on your own day-to-day needs, when you feel that you need that. And that was basically the whole essence of establishing Orasis, taking a very initial formula into development, research, many years of optimizations, clinical studies, and so on. I mean, very long story short, after many years of development, we now have an FDA-approved drug called Qlosi. That's the trademark that was obviously approved as well by the FDA, and we're about to launch very, very soon in the US.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, so someone asked me recently, why are you, as a retina specialist, me personally, interviewing somebody about presbyopia? And I will tell you, it is probably the number one question I get asked about, even as a retina specialist, is at the end of my conversation, educating someone on macular degeneration, patients will say, well, doc, but there's one more thing. I'm having a hard time reading up close. And I said, I understand that, and it's something that we should talk about, but I'm glad we're starting to look at alternatives, right? Because I think in 2025, people have this expectation where we want to be free of glasses or these other kind of more traditional approaches to things. We live in a day and age of LASIK and all these types of procedures that can free us of glasses. And so this is kind of another option, thinking in the same direction, which is we want to be able to have these tools. So I'm glad that the name of the medicine actually makes a lot of sense too with Qlosi. This is a unique thing, in my opinion. A lot of times we have these medications where the names don't make any sense, but this one is a nice fit, it seems to be. So tell us, for those of us that know about drug development, we know that these things can take a long time. And you said the company has been around for about 10 years. So tell us, take us back to the origin of your company and perhaps how you got involved in the company, whether that was as a founder or that was coming on later in the process.
Yeah, sure. So the idea came from three scientists who had an initial development of a formula for the treatment of presbyopia. You may remember until 5 years ago, there are few companies that developed inlays for the treatment of presbyopia using the pinhole effect. Now, the pinhole concept works very well for the correction of near vision. So pinhole effect, increase in depth of field, this is what is correcting presbyopia, gives you that correction of your near vision. Those inlays didn't really work well because it involved some sort of a procedure, invasive procedure, created few long-term effects and safety issues. And the idea behind our product was to work with the same, let's say, optical concept, the pinhole effect, increase in depth of field, by finding something which is much more simple, safe, ideally also tolerable, comfortable, in order to correct presbyopia. So that was the very kind of initial idea. I joined the company right at the beginning. Sequoia Capital, a very well-known fund, venture capital fund, got the opportunity to evaluate that project, and I actually helped them in the due diligence when they just before they made their initial investment. And both myself and also Sequoia really liked what we have seen. And at the end of that process, Sequoia decided that they want to invest in the company, and then they offered me to join as the CEO and really build the company. That was late 2015. So we knew what we have in mind. We knew that, what are the next steps in terms of starting to move into controlled clinical studies, controlled manufacturing, and gradually start building the foundations for a company. At the beginning, it was kind of a one-man show. I was really the only employee in the company for quite some time. But as we started to move ahead in the development, we really started to build the company, and now the company is already ready with all the relevant infrastructure for a US launch. You asked how was my journey to get into that company. My background is actually not from the science side. It's more, believe it or not, it's on the finance side. However, after I did my MBA, it was at INSEAD in France, I started to work for Eli Lilly, one of the really great pharmaceutical companies globally. I worked many years in Lilly. I love the company and I love the pharma industry. And since I started there, I never really left the pharma industry. I'm now already more than 20 years with pharma experience. After many years in Lilly, I decided I want to move into an entrepreneurial career path. And actually, Orasis has been the third company I've been running. So this is, in a nutshell, how I ended up in the pharma industry and how I ended up at Orasis. But really, Orasis has been my almost my life project, definitely my career project for the past almost 10 years.
So that's an amazing story. I think you've gone from being kind of the first man in this company to now building your team out. Oftentimes when we see that, we know that at the CEO level, you have to kind of change your mindset along the way, right? And so you went from being a one-man show, really kind of probably focusing a little bit more on the science and getting the science, to a point where you can get an approval, to now building out a team, working on marketing. So tell us a little bit about that transition, especially the change in mindset that you have to have from kind of building the product to then building the team that launches the product.
Yeah, no, firstly, you're absolutely right. I feel like if I look back at these past 10 years, like every year or two, it's almost a completely different role. Fortunately, I do have this big multinational background, as well as the small startup background. And I've kind of used those skills and experience that I gained before joining Orasis for various stages of Orasis. The team that I started to build and great people around me continued to build together with me, I would say has very similar experience. Many of our team members are people with years of experience in the pharmaceutical world, years of experience in eye care, but also when you look at industry experience, Many come with both multinational experience, companies like Lilly, but also companies in the field of eye care, such as Alcon and Bausch & Lomb and Novartis and so on, as well as startup experience. And that is really important when you're taking a company from a very early proof of concept all the way through eventually a full-fledged organization with all the relevant functions and basically a commercial stage organization getting ready to launch a product. Now, if I go back to that period of development, really, right from the beginning, we knew what is the end goal here. We knew that there is a product, or let's say a category, which eventually it's a quality of life category. We spoke about the need for people to get alternatives to reading glasses, get the break from the reading glasses, but at the same time, we knew that people would also want to make sure that any alternative to the reading glasses would not be coming while compromising on safety, on tolerance, on comfort. So that has been really our key focus throughout development. Finding a product that works well, improves their vision, but at the same time, a product that has a great safety, comfort, and tolerability profile. And really, after years of research, development, optimization, fine-tuning of every single element in our formula, we ended up with this final formula that we took to our phase 3 studies and eventually to FDA submission and approval.
So tell us a little bit about the data from the phase 3 studies and what the expectation is for a treatment like this.
Yeah, so primary endpoint defined by the FDA is 3-line improvement in near vision charts, ETDRS charts. That's the gold standard used required by the FDA. So 3-line improvement without reducing by 1 line or more in distance vision. So you need to demonstrate 3-line improvement in near without a reduction of 1 line or more in distance. We actually added in all our studies several other endpoints around the area of safety, comfort, and tolerability that I mentioned earlier, because we knew that when that product comes to real world, those endpoints are going to be not less important than the efficacy ones. Mm-hmm. So on the efficacy one, on the primary endpoint, we're here today. So definitely we met those endpoints very successfully with very, very low p-values. So the drug really works well. That mechanism of action proved itself very well in the clinic. And I would also add on the efficacy side that not only that we met the formal FDA endpoint, we also looked at functional near vision as an endpoint. So how many people are actually getting into 20/40 or better? 20/40 is basically the threshold for being able to perform most of the day-to-day near vision tasks. And the results there were also phenomenal, with the vast majority of patients reaching functional near vision once using Qlosi. The study was 15 days. People were dosed twice a day, every day. And we saw the results immediately on day 1, going all the way through day 15. That's on the efficacy side. On the safety side, we've seen, or safety, comfort, tolerability, we had several other indicators, endpoints, such as eye redness and comfort, and obviously proper documentation of all adverse events. And what we've seen really is a great safety, comfort, and tolerability profile, which, for example, I mentioned eye redness, and miotic agents at high concentration are known to cause sometimes eye redness. We had really no eye redness caused by the drop whatsoever. And comfort, great results on comfort scales that we evaluated throughout all our studies. And then finally, a very small number of adverse events. And not less important, vast majority of them were mild, temporary, and self-resolving. So really summarizing, and coming back to this balance of efficacy, safety, and comfort, tolerability that we're looking for, we hit all those endpoints and believe we have the right product for this unique category.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so before we get into kind of, maybe how this will launch and where you see the presbyopia landscape going in the next 5 to 10 years, I wanted to take a minute because I realize that our audience probably doesn't know the genesis of the name of the company, Orasis. So I think it's fascinating. So I think just tell us a little bit about that before we move forward.
Yeah, sure. So I spent, hopefully everything we're doing at Orasis is we're doing thoroughly. And I thought at that time when we established the company that finding the right name is also something that requires a proper process. And honestly, I think I looked at hundreds of names before choosing Orasis. Orasis is actually a Greek name, and the literal meaning in Greek is good vision. So somebody with Orasis means somebody that has good vision on the very basic physical meaning of that. But at the same time, it also has a positive mental implication. So if you're saying about somebody in Greek that person has orasis, it doesn't mean that person just sees well physically. It means that person has a great vision on the mental side. It really is a word with a very good mental connotation. And I thought that name represents very well not only the kind of the technicalities of what we want to achieve with Orasis eventually, but also what the approach of this company should be. And I want it as the CEO of the company to be. So ended up loving the name, choosing that, and the name goes with us until today.
No, I love it. I think that's great insight for people that are just learning about the company. So tell us a little bit, I think what's fascinating about some of these conversations is, you've obviously done a good job and created this successful company, but we know that there are always challenges along the way. And I think it's good for our listeners to kind of hear some of those insights as well. Some of the challenges you may have had. We've had, prior CEOs talk about, forks in the road where they've had to make big decisions or coming down to the wire with funding and things like that. And so tell us, maybe an insight or two on the company, because I think it also helps people understand, what this company is and how it's functioning and maybe perhaps how it will function in the future.
Yeah, so obviously, when you have a long development plan, and in the pharmaceutical world, we know it's always very long. There are always some bumps in the road. There are always some unexpected, chains of events from time to time. One thing, and we spoke about Sequoia and the board member from Sequoia that was the first one to invest in the company. And that board member, by the way, is still a board member at Orasis, and Sequoia continued to invest in the company in our subsequent round. One thing that I learned from him, I have to give him the credit, back in 2015, whenever we started a meeting, he would always tell me, start with everything that goes wrong, start with the things that are, where do you have issues? Let's go later to where we are, where to all the positives. And one kind of discipline that many of it, I do give a lot of credit for kind of implementing that is like always plan for success, but be ready with basically fallback scenarios. That is relevant for the development plan, really for the clinical studies. That is also relevant for funding. You mentioned funding, which is always something that is challenging in the world of startups. If I look at the development, so again, I mentioned this idea of finding a product with the right balance of efficacy, safety, and comfort. Now, in our world, there is of presbyopia, miotic agents, there are always trade-offs. You increase your concentration of your miotic agent, in our case, Pilocarpine, you will constrict your pupils strong. You will have a stronger constriction of your pupil. At one point in time, it comes with a certain limitation, right? Because once the pupil is below 2 millimeters, you're starting to see negative effects of diffraction, basically dim vision effect on distance vision, and so on. So where do you draw that thin line? And at the same time, by the way, you increase concentration. At one point in time, you start to see meaningful adverse events, finding that sweet spot. So at one point in time, like when we really wanted to find the optimal balance, I remember at least one of our studies, not clinical, but even earlier than that, we had like 15 different minor variations of the formula until we really found the one that we thought was the optimal. So that's one way that we handle that. Another one, we did dose optimization study and really wanted to make sure that we're having all the relevant options eventually to find a sweet spot. And if that one fails, failing doesn't mean not good efficacy. Maybe it means wrong safety signal. Then we already have the others that are already tested, evaluated, and we can move forward. And another example, and again, something very specific, phase 2, many companies are choosing to do a small scale phase 2. And then sometimes results are not really conclusive, and then you need to repeat phase 2. And we took a decision in the company and with the board, let's invest more, not always easy in a startup environment. Let's make sure that the N of the study is big enough. So whatever the signals are, we know for real what works and what doesn't. So we don't need to repeat phase 2. We can go ahead directly into phase 3. But again, we tested several alternatives, knowing that one of them will be better than the others, and that one will take into phase 3. So I try to give you a couple of examples of how we make sure that we're always planning ahead, understanding that not everything will work well, and making sure that time-wise, financial-wise, we're always prepared for the next step. Definitely not easy, and sometimes you also need to be, to be a bit lucky. But if you plan well, I think luck comes as well with that. So that has been the experience so far.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice for folks that are in, perhaps the position you were in maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, that are kind of looking at these forks in the road and looking to make these decisions. I think this is great advice. And like you said, sometimes luck plays a role, timing plays a role in some of these things. The market continues to change, and so that has to be there when your product comes to market. And so let's talk about that in terms of the market and perhaps where we see things going, right? So, in a world, like we said, we've already identified that there is this need, that people have this appetite for alternative solutions to reading glasses. So where do you see kind of Qlosi fitting in a world where perhaps, there's other kind of pharmacologic solutions, there's other, contact lens solutions, there's our traditional glasses. So tell us where you see this fitting, not only now, and then perhaps kind of where things are going in the next few years, you see.
Sure. So again, it's a huge category, almost 2 billion people globally, almost 130 million in the US. Naturally, we're not the only one out there with products for the treatment of presbyopia. But if I'm focusing on our category of pharmacological solutions, what I believe, so we have already one product that launched about 3 years ago, acuity, and the launch by now it's perceived by the, kind of commonly perceived as not a very successful one. And there are a couple of other products in the pipeline. So the only approved products to date are Qlosi from Orasis and Acuity from Allergan. There are a couple of others in process. But really, when you look at the entire landscape, including also the products that may come at a later stage, what really differentiates Qlosi is our focus on the low dose. So we are the lowest approved concentration of pilocarpine. And I mentioned earlier our basically focus on finding also great results on the safety, comfort, and tolerability. Couple of words on the formula and what really differentiates us. It's not only the low dose. The low dose is key, but we added several elements in order to make sure that we're getting the right effect on efficacy, safety, and comfort. It's a near neutral pH formula that is helping us a lot on getting a better bioavailability, and in a way help us to maximize the effect of our pilocarpine. The traditional pilocarpine that has been used for glaucoma for many years comes at a much lower pH than our pH, which is near neutral pH, almost around 6. And again, that makes a big difference. And we've worked really, really hard to find that formula with that near neutral pH that gives us those advantages. We also have 2 different lubricating agents, HA and HPMC, both of them very well known as standalone products in the US, helping us not only in the lubricating effect, but also allowing a longer residence time on the ocular surface. And again, help us in kind of getting the right efficacy. And the lubricating effect definitely helps also on the comfort, tolerability side. Finally, preservative-free formula. Our formula is preservative-free. And we all know that preservative-free is very important, not only for the long-term safety, also for the long-term efficacy. You don't have the compromise that is coming with preservative on the eye that is taken on a daily basis or almost on a daily basis. So really, when you kind of zoom out a bit, you see that every single element here, the vehicle, the active, the concentration, everything together, like each of them stand alone, but all of them together are really making our formula clearly differentiated. Now, if I try to look a bit at the broader picture, not only on the formula side, but let's say on the commercial side, we want to give people a break from their readers. We don't have any ambitions to eliminate reading glasses from the world. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think we need it. I think that with our drop that is indicated for up to twice a day, we're giving patients the flexibility to use it when they need it, for the duration they need it, based on their own personal lifestyles that may actually vary between one day and the other. That product profile with the right efficacy, with great safety profile, comfort, tolerability, and the flexibility to use the product when you need it, all of those together, I believe, will allow us to build that market and to lead that market at the longer term.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Elad, I want to thank you for your time today. I think you've given us really great insights, not only to the company itself, but to the product and the landscape ahead. And hopefully our listeners will find this discussion very beneficial. So thank you again for your time, and we appreciate you today.
Sure. Thank you very much. Our launch is very, very soon, and I definitely look forward to share more details once the product is in the market and with you and with your audience. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I look forward to speaking again.
Yeah, we wish you the best on that launch. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening in to the New Insight podcast. We really appreciate your time. Be sure to subscribe to our channel on your preferred listening or watching platform. And if you're interested in more ophthalmology news or other podcasts, visit hcplive.com and check out our offerings. For now, I'm Dr. Veeral Sheth. Hope to see you next time to discuss what's new in sight.